We're here with Stephen Lewis at the International Conference on AIDS, which is down here in Cape Town, South Africa. And he is the founder of the Stephen Lewis Foundation, which is on the ground, hits the money, hits the ground running.
Yes, although I'm here under different auspices in a way, without meaning to undermine you.
A strong request.
I also work with an NGO. I'm a co-director of an NGO called AIDS Free World, which is based in the United States and which is engaged solely in advocacy rather than programming. And that's why I came to make a speech at the conference, which was essentially an advocacy exercise.
And I think that when you talk about activism for scientists, I think there is nothing more true or encouraging than having a leader of a country being hit square between the eyes with a scientist who tells them the truth about this disease.
That's a fair point. You know, scientists, researchers, clinicians, doctors, they live their lives practicing their craft. And when they graduate from their university establishment and take on a professional career, they don't assume that they'll be mounting the barricades or that they will be engaged in advocacy. But if they can be persuaded to be activists because they speak with such authority and the world tends to listen to them, then it makes a difference. And as you say, they can confront the establishment and sometimes make the establishment succumb. I've always believed in life that nothing is ever hopeless. It can induce despair from time to time when you face an issue like AIDS. But you can always move things forward. The pendulum will always swing if you keep at it. So you should never be overwhelmed by the subject matter, and you should never give up. You've got to be tenacious and indefatigable and just never give up. And if you accept that as the rationale for what you're doing, so you don't worry about occasional setbacks, then any group of people grabbing an issue can make it public, whether they call a press conference, whether they write letters to a newspaper editor, whether they mount a podium or a platform, if they have an opportunity at some meeting or gathering or conference, they can make a difference. And if it's a group of people espousing the need for male circumcision, or a group of people saying we've got to stop the transmission of the virus from the mother to the child during the birthing process, or a group of people saying the G8 countries are clearly not going to give the money that's required to rescue millions of people from death, then frankly, it makes all the difference in the world because it's a matter of voices. People respond to respected voices.
I know that you've done an awful lot about needle exchange, which was extremely important in Canada with Julio Montana, among other things.
Well, frankly, in the years that I spent as the UN envoy on HIV/AIDS in Africa, I saw every single president and sat down with every president and his cabinet, with the exception of Thabo Mbeki, the president of South Africa, who would not see me because I was a critic of what South Africa's neglect was doing to its people. But every single other country, I sat with the president, I even with Obasanjo and the Nigerian cabinet. I sat with all of them. I talked with them. We discussed the policies. We discussed the progress or lack of progress. They were open to influence. And every country I went to, I met with civil society before I met with the cabinet. So I knew what civil society wanted. And every country I went to, I met with the group of people living with AIDS, the formal association of people living with AIDS, before I met with the cabinet, so I could tell them what they wanted. And then I did something which comes from political training, not particularly from the UN. I went back and reported to the people I had met with what I had been told and what I had been promised. Because you sort of build a dialogue. A dialogue, exactly.
And then this follow through and all that. Yeah, that is a fabulous thing to have said. I mean, as obviously as a position that you were, it was appropriate that you did that. It was an official process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was very lucky. I'd been appointed by the Secretary General of the UN, so they couldn't very well say we won't see you. I saw that I could use the position to gain access. I didn't want to throw that opportunity away.
So what are some of your future endeavors, other than the massive amount of formal work that you do?
No, I don't want to inflate it. I work most closely with the NGO in the United States. We are working on trying to persuade governments to enact a new international agency for women through the United Nations, which I think is going to happen before the end of this year. It will have an Undersecretary General, I hope an initial budget of $1 billion a year, and a tremendous operational capacity on the ground in country, so that women, for example, struggling with HIV will have some organization to turn to for technical support and resources. At the moment, the largest failure in AIDS has been around women. It's been lamentable. And in the United Nations hasn't quite discovered yet that there are two genders in the world. They're just inching their way to that. And then we're working extremely hard on questions of sexual violence in the Congo and in the turbulence around the Zimbabwe elections last year, when huge numbers of women were raped. And we're collecting affidavits in order to be able to take the political leadership and the rapists to court down the road. We're working on AIDS and disabilities. We're working on AIDS and tuberculosis. We're working on AIDS and refugees to make sure that they're covered for treatment when they move from one country to another. So there's continuity of treatment. We're doing that from Haiti and the Dominican Republic right through to Botswana. And we're producing an atlas on AIDS of a very unusual variety, which will emerge on December 1st, 2010, which will be very controversial because the positions we take are not the positions which are widely embraced by the hotshots of the establishment.
Now, have you ever done, or have you? I know there have been some report cards that have been created for governments and various entities, especially pharmaceutical companies. Have you considered that, or feel like you'd like to be a part of that kind of a process?
I respect the report card rationale, but I think I'd rather take individual issues and just go after them. We created AIDS-Free World in order to have a vehicle which could give profile to the most controversial issues and not recede into the passivity which is everywhere evident. So if it's a sexual violence issue or if it's a women's agency or something like that, we'll just go after it determinedly, tenaciously. You know, I'm a democratic socialist by ideology. I was an elected member for more than 15 years in Canada. And I've had some multilateral experience at the UN and in UNICEF and on the envoy role. And I guess I've come to the conclusion that the best way to function in life is to have a core set of principles against which you measure human behavior and social policy. And then in an uncompromising way, you fight for those principles.
And you've been tenacious in your presentations and certainly in your actions. And one can't complain about anything you've done.
Well, no, but you can disagree profoundly with the positions, as people often do.
Right.
But I feel good about taking the positions. What is life for if not to take positions?
It does it. But I think bottom line is what we're all saying is that what do we have to do to get the job done?
Precisely. And I think at this conference, which has been quite fascinating, the emergence of Dr. Julio Montaner as an extraordinary force, advocating the thesis that treatment is prevention and finding that it is suddenly taking hold. This is a very exciting piece of momentum. You know, I'm going to be 72 in a few months' time. I'm inching into my dotage.
You really only look 62, maybe 52.
My day is past. So watching these young people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s,
and we need more of them.
Yes, I agree.
And that's what we're hoping in this presentation is to maybe there's more out there who want to turn that leaf.
Well, they make it in their 20s and 30s then. Let's bring it right. Because some of the young people at this conference, the woman from the Treatment Action Campaign, who spoke at the opening.
There were some very eloquent speakers,
I was on a press conference today with Paula.
We're going to be interviewing her next.
Oh, well, I'll tell you something. I'm a groupie where Paula is concerned. I have rarely encountered so formidable and articulate a young woman. Staggering. You see, there's a whole generation.
And she looks like a very young person. I don't know her age.
20s, late 20s.
Amazing. It's wonderful to see this.
She's doing a master's in public health. It's phenomenal.
And we need more people that are in the science field. I don't think anyone comes into the field feeling like I'm going to get in this because it's easy. They're getting into it because it's hard, because it's a profound challenge. The science of AIDS is a profound challenge.
And
just a lot of disappointments.
If you enter the field, it's because you feel strongly about the issues and you're willing to give a chunk of life to pursuing the importance.
And not being beaten down. I so much appreciate you doing the time with us here in this little bit of an interview, and we always look forward to another opportunity to do that. I'm sure we'll have more.